Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. We'll just give it another minute while we let everyone connect to the chat and collect their audio and their microphones. And we're excited to get started with our Green Career Symposium. So we'll just give it 30 seconds and then we'll be able to kick off here. While we're waiting for more people to join, I would love if you would be able to write in the chat where you are in the world, where you're signing in from, what country, and we'd love to see the diversity of everyone in the Zoom room. So just take a minute and type into the chat. All right, so I think we have a lot of people connected, so we'll kick off and then we'll get started. So I think most of you know me. I'm Amanda. I'm the director of the Global Schools program. And we're very excited to have our students and educators on this call that are part of the Schools for Goal 7 project that we're doing with Siemens Energy. This has been a really exciting project where we've had students and schools join from all over the world to learn about renewable energy, to learn about the energy transition, and to play Planet Rescuers on Minecraft. So it's been a super fun experience. 2 weeks ago, we had all of the student presentations on Minecraft, and that was so exciting. And congratulations to all of the students for presenting. And now we're going to do something a little bit different, and we're going to hear from a few sustainability professionals in this space. Because everyone has been working on Minecraft and we've seen how to build renewable energy systems. We've seen how to think about renewable energy in the classroom. But how does this really relate to real life? So that's kind of the purpose of our session today. So I will introduce all of the speakers in a moment. We have 5 incredible speakers, and I will give you a little bit of insights into their background. You will all have time to ask questions as well. Before we get into our speaker panel, I wanted to hand it over first to Maximilian to really give us a welcome and overview of his work as the head of sustainability at Siemens Gamesa, and really tell us in a few minutes why building the future leaders really matters in the energy sector and why is it important for students to consider green careers. So over to you.
Thank you, Amanda, and hi everyone from my side also. I'm Maximilian. I'm leading the global sustainability team at Siemens Gamesa, and we are truly driven by the conviction that there is a business case out there for sustainability. Because when you lead sustainability at a global wind turbine manufacturer, scale is both. It's the opportunity and the challenge for us at the end. We operate across manufacturing, products, global supply chains, and our decisions at the end, they influence projects that run for 25, 30 years and really have an impact on our energy systems. So sustainability at the end, at this scale, it's not just one initiative. It's about systems that work everywhere and that also work every day. So it's really the system thinking and bringing together ecosystems, which is really crucial for a successful energy transition and also to bring sustainability to life. Because sustainability and the energy transition, it's not only something we want to conceptualize, it's something that we want to bring to life. And therefore, it's also so interesting to engage also with all the young students from all over the world because at the end, it's really about developing skills also for the energy transition. And there's a machine room for the energy transition where we need engineers, where we need skilled labor to go outside on the sea, on vessels in harsh condition to install and service turbines or to take them down again and make them the feedstock of the future. There's also a back office that ensures the financing around it, all the permits are available and the like. And there's also people that bring it all together at the end again. And that's something where I think is really nice to connect it. We see all our activities along a life cycle from a beginning to an end and the end and to a new beginning afterwards also. And that's why the circularity thinking is for me the start of this meeting, because at the end it's also the same with talent development and interest in people for different professions in our industry. we always need to start over and need to attract also more people to think about the energy transition, think in these systems. And therefore, really happy to see so many participants today here on the call. And Amanda, handing over back to you so that we can take it along the panel also.
Thank you so much for those opening remarks. That is amazing, and we're really glad to have you here with us. So before we get into the panel, I have a quick poll that I wanted to poll the audience with a quick quiz. So we will see if this works. This is the first time I'm doing this poll this way. So I'm going to launch the poll. Hopefully everyone can see this on your Zoom account. So we have three questions, and we'd love to hear, your responses to these questions. So the first question is, which area of green careers are you most interested in right now? So there's a couple different answers. We have renewable energy, climate policy and advocacy, sustainable business. So feel free to click on that code so we can get a sense of who is in the room here and what's your interests. The next question we have is, what is your biggest barrier to pursuing a career in sustainability? And the last one is, what motivates you to pursue a green career or maybe in the future? So we'll take 1 minute and do this activity. And this way, all of the speakers can also see what the students are saying and the educators. And the speakers can feel free to participate as well. Maybe you're thinking about this from new perspectives. So about 30 more seconds here on my little timer. All right, so what we're seeing so far, we have about 45 people that have participated. We see a lot of people are interested in renewable energy, climate policy, and advocacy, but in general, there's quite a variety of interests that are on the call here. We're also seeing a lot of people interested in education, which does also make sense as well. The second question, we have 45 people also participated. And so it looks like one of the main things that's coming out is, what is the biggest barrier to pursuing a career in sustainability is I don't see clear entry points or pathways into the field. So maybe the speakers can keep this in mind when you're giving your advice and your questions. What are the entry points into the field? The last one, very different interests and motivations to pursuing a green career. And the top answers are making a positive impact on the environment and planet and contributing to solving climate change and global challenges. So that's really interesting and kind of sets the stage for the rest of the conversation today. So I'm going to end the poll. Thank you everyone for participating. We'll be able to save that and see that later, of course, as well. Mhm. All right, so now we're going to hear from all of our speakers. And I would encourage everyone to prepare their questions because we are going to have time for a question and answer at the end. And I will just briefly introduce the speakers before going into our panel discussion. So we already heard from Maximilian. He's the head of sustainability at Siemens Gamesa, and we heard a little bit about him, but he will be sharing more on the panel. We're also going to hear from Sharon Talewa, the Idea and Innovation Manager at Siemens Gamesa. She's an engineer, and she holds a bachelor's degree in telecommunication and information engineering. So we're really excited to hear from Sharon. We're also going to hear from Angie Plitch. She's the founder of Hopscotch Collective, and she's a strategist and operations consultant. She partners with different organizations to tackle their most mission-critical challenges and really help organizations have the capacity they need to create lasting and impact growth. And she has experience also in the sustainable fashion industry and then the fashion side as well, which is interesting. And we're really excited to hear from them. We'll also have Thomas Liu. He's the Africa Climate, Environment, and consultant at Accenture. Excuse me, Thomas. He's been working for a variety of governments and foundations and NGOs on climate action and just transition. So we're very excited to hear from him as well. And then we have Mohammed Azam. He's a senior science analyst at the Climate Center at Schmidt Scientists. And really, their program addresses challenges and questions when it comes to research, science, AI. And we're really excited to hear from all of them today. So we'll move into round one of careers, a career snapshot. And this is where we're going to ask the panelists to share about their role, their day-to-day, and their journey into the space. So the first question will go to Maximilian for about 2 minutes. So you're leading sustainability across a global renewable energy company. Can you tell everyone here about the challenges you're trying to solve and how your career led you to this position? Mhm.
Cool. Thanks, Amanda. Whew, in 2 minutes, super challenging, but I'll try to be brief. Maybe I wanted to give you a snapshot of what I'm actually solving in my everyday life. And it's four key areas that are keeping me really busy. So the first one is to really implement life cycle thinking at industrial scale. So we design turbines, and when we design them, we really need to think about how they can be low carbon, how they can be recyclable, but also how they can be bankable. So it's really from thinking about the materials in the wind turbine, steel, copper, magnets, aluminum, and the like, all the way down to end of life and how to make them circular and make them the feedstock for future turbines again. And second big area I'm working in is supply chain realities. So we have roughly 20,000 suppliers in our portfolio in very different regions across the globe. And we need to ensure human rights aspects, environmental aspects, credible decarbonization, while also keeping our supply chains competitive, of course. So our supply chains are also one of the key gateways for us to strengthen our company. Now, third aspect that really keeps me busy is that regulatory landscape is heavily evolving in our industry. Uh, we have a lot of regulations out there. We have the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive in Europe, Net Zero Industry Act in Europe, decarbonization mechanisms and schemes all over the world. We have phase out of PFAS or F-gas or of different materials that we can use. So a lot of requirements, and we need to make them tangible and workable also for engineers, for our buyers, for our factories, so that everyone understands what does it mean for us to implement also in my day. And then we also make sustainability investments. So really thinking about how our customers and banks can provide also the financing for a wind turbine. Because there's a really big difference if you invest in a wind turbine, different regions in the world, and you pay 4% interest or you pay 20% interest. So then the project will not capitalize and then we will not have a business case. So it's really about making sustainability tangible along the life cycle. And very briefly, maybe about myself, how I ended up where I am now. So I did a lot of research. I was one of the first movers 15 years ago, starting research in sustainability, conducted a PhD also on sustainable management, sustainable finance. And my research was really focused on better understanding the business case for sustainability. So is there a positive relationship between a firm's sustainability performance and its financial performance? And the good news is research shows yes, there is. And there's not only a business case for being a strong performer, there's also a business case for continuously improving your performance. And this is the spirit how we also now manage our suppliers and our own company to continuously improve also our footprints. With this, Amanda, giving back to you.
Thank you so much. I think that's super interesting how that all comes together, and I'm sure we'll have questions on that as we go forward. So I'll pass the question over to Sharon. So you are the innovation manager and you also are a former engineer. So you have this intersection of engineering and innovation. Can you share more what your work focuses on at Siemens Gamesa?
Yes, thanks a lot, Amanda. So I will maybe start with a little bit about myself. So I started my career in Kenya after studying telecommunications engineering. I moved across a couple of industries and I ended up in renewable energy. I'm currently working in our wind power business in the aftermarket section. So what it means to work in aftermarkets, it's that once we have built our turbines, once the assets have been installed for the customer, we need to keep them operating reliably, sustainably for around 30 years, for 3 decades. What this means is that they're going to go through a lot of changes. So we're going to experience a lot of changes to grid. We are going to experience a lot of changes to regulations, just as Maximilian mentioned. We are going to experience a lot of changes in the digital space. And what we are looking at in the team is that how can we prepare or how can we keep our customers at par with the latest changes in regulatory so that they are compliant? How can we develop the latest cybersecurity standards, or how can we adhere to the latest cybersecurity standards so that these assets are secure? And how can we extend the lifetime so that we have the wind turbines operating even longer and providing more value to the customer? So our team sits at the intersection of the customers, understanding what is the need in the different regions, bringing together product management. So how do we translate these customer needs into actual products? And of course, coordinating with engineering department that we can build these solutions as fast as possible. It is very interesting because it is not one or two things that we're working on. We have different programs and we have to look at solutions across this. And we also know that each region has different requirements depending on the current policy in that region. So it just means having the ability to really bring different stakeholders together, bring these ideas together, and then materialize them into products. Back to you, Amanda.
Perfect. Thank you so much for kind of explaining all of that and how things actually go to full products. I think that's really interesting. So I will pass over to Thomas. I think you are here, Thomas. It's so great to see you. So Thomas works with governments, NGOs, and global systems on climate, and we had a lot of people in the poll saying they're interested in climate advocacy. So Thomas, can you tell us what your role looks like and how you got into this field?
Yeah, well, thank you, Amanda, and thanks for having me here. And it really does sound like a good project that Global School has with Siemens, and wish I can participate in it myself. And I was lucky to be one of the kind of early cohorts of the Global Schools program, so really nice to be back. So in terms of what I do, I really mainly focus on supporting organizations in the international development space. So whether they are NGOs, foundations, or international organizations on thinking about their climate, energy, and also environmental priorities, right? So there is some bit of advocacy involved as well, but a lot of what I do on a day-to-day is helping them think about how do they function better, right? Such as how can they raise more money? How do they have a better operating model within their organization? How do they partner with other organizations better in order to achieve the climate impact that they want? And so a lot of that is really mainly serving and supporting our clients, but also being out there, being in the market and getting to know other peer organizations, right? And getting to know potential clients, right? And having them to also be part of the portfolio that we do support. So it's really different every day, but every day is an exciting day because there's so much, right, that one is learning and just like absorbing, right, the knowledge from people on the field, our partners, our clients, and sometimes doing that matchmaking, bringing people together ultimately is quite rewarding.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we'll have more questions later on more. And we're really happy to have you back as well. So thank you so much for participating. So I'm going to Angie next. So your career spans public health, corporate sustainability, and now you founded your own consulting business, which is really cool. So can you tell us about the work you're doing and how you navigated all of those different changes to what you're doing today?
Thanks, Amanda. It's wonderful to be here with you all today. As Amanda shared, I'm now an independent strategy consultant, which is just essentially means that I take on work that is meaningful to me, and I get to work with clients whose mission and work I believe in, and I try to help them grow sustainably. In practice, what does that look like? Over the last couple of years, I've sort of built a portfolio of clients that I enjoy working with. A few examples for you. I worked with Lululemon, which is a premium athleisure brand, and helped them come up with their 2030 strategy for people and planet. Another client I'm working with right now is a company called SIV Impact. They're a company that is developing water replenishment and nature-based projects in India. And the projects that the company is developing right now is really focused on how do you bring clean water and recharge groundwater levels. And what we're doing is developing projects that big corporate entities, so like the Amazons of the world, the Microsofts of the world, the Salesforces of the world, they all have sustainability um, goals in their 2025, 2030 plans. And the way they reach those goals is they partner with companies like the one that I'm working with to invest in projects in places like India. And so we've got a couple projects going on there right now. And then the last example that I'd share with you is a company that I'm really passionate about. It is a plant-based fast food company called Faceplant. And if you want to check them out online, there's only one location right now. It's in Portland, Oregon, in the Pacific Northwest of the USA. The website for the company is eatfaceplant.com, and I'll pop that into the chat after I talk. But the company is trying to be to compete with McDonald's and to beat McDonald's. So how do you deliver a burger, fries, shake, nuggets that are just simply delicious and better for the world because it's all plant-based? So I work with them on sustainable growth. It's probably pretty clear to you that I've had several distinct chapters in my career, and I would say that the narrative throughout all of it, it's part of the same arc. I'm motivated to do work where I can, excuse me, my voice, where I can do the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people. So, a brief history of my career in three chapters. I started working in global health, where I worked on the previous iteration of the SDGs. They were called the Millennium Development Goals in 2015. So, I was working on maternal and child health, mostly in sub-Saharan Africa. After a number of years in global health, I learned that I wanted to get a much deeper understanding of how do you get products that people need and want to where they can use them at a price they can and will pay. And that's how I ended up at Nike. Nike was fascinating, really obviously a global brand trying to do good by their consumers and by the earth. So the role that I enjoyed the most there was my sustainable innovation role. And then after, gosh, almost a decade there, I started the sustainable strategy consulting company, which is what I'm currently doing. Hope that helps and happy to answer questions at the end. Thanks, Amanda.
That's really exciting, and I'm sure some of the students might have some ideas on the fast food company. Maybe they would like to share that, and feel free to pop it into the chat as well.
I will. Thank you.
Well, I'll go to our last panelist, Azam. So we're excited to hear from you as well. So you're working at Schmidt Sciences, which works at the intersection of climate, science, and increasingly AI, kind of from the lens of academia and grant making. You do so much work there, so it's exciting to have you. So we're really interested in kind of hearing about the intersections of these projects. How are you helping to advance scientific collaboration across the world? And how do you decide which ideas or problems are worth investing in? So over to you.
Thanks, Amanda. So the way I would answer that starts with the strategic frame that the Schmidt Sciences Climate Center is built on. So we believe that within the next decade, the world governments and companies will be sincere about bending the carbon curve. But the science and models that actually tell you what's happening with our earth systems, what's happening with our fresh water doesn't exist yet. So we would like to fund those models, those data sets that will give you the exact picture of what's happening when the world will indeed be serious about bending the carbon curve. So we generally focus on three major buckets. We need a deeper understanding of the planet, as I said, so how the earth and energy systems are actually changing. And we need the people for doing that. So empowering the people with interdisciplinary networks, especially in the parts of the world where climate impact lands the hardest. Angie was talking about India. So India is one of the prime cases of that. And we need the tools. So the science that decision makers in policy, finance, and industry can actually pick up and use. So when an idea comes across my desk and my work, we generally look at how many buckets is it actually filling. If it's working on all three of these: people, tools, and planets, those are the one that gets the highest priority. I can give you an example from my work. I lead the Research Frontiers Network program. The idea is to fund scientific and academic institutions in the global south and provide them their own resources so that they can have the power to choose their own research directions and their own projects. So we have started this with India, and with IIT Delhi and IIT Kanpur we have provided them with their own re-granting authority, which means that they are autonomous and they can choose their own projects without our direct oversight. The second case that I have been leading is called the Climate and Energy Frontiers work. We have started that with India as well. So this was a coordination among 60 authors, and they came up with 7 research frontiers for India, which are also applicable to other global south countries. Um, and they have come up with this case that working in silos within the climate space is what's detrimental, because people are working separately on energy technology, separately on climate transition, separately on water, but there are intersections and feedbacks that need to be linked. So that is very important, and that is also something that we focus on a lot. Over to you, Amanda.
Thank you so much for explaining that and also the specific examples and the region that you're working in. I think the work is really incredible and fascinating. So we're going to have each person on the panel is going to have one more question, and then we're going to go to questions from the audience. So I would encourage the students to start typing them in the chat or start thinking of them so you can raise your hand when it's time. So Sharon, back over to you. So alongside your work as an engineer and innovation leader, you've also focused on education initiatives. So how do you think education needs to change to better prepare students for the future? And what advice would you give the students today on what they're learning and their skills?
Yeah, thanks again, Amanda. So I'm really, really passionate about education projects, and I could be talking about this for a long time. But I will just keep it short by saying that we are living in the age of artificial intelligence. Our students are going to be finishing their studies and going to work in a workplace that's going to be highly defined by technology, by AI. What this means is that the skills that are going to matter the most are going to be the human skills. So we're looking at empathy, critical thinking, adaptability, because if you need to learn something technical right now, it's the best time. You can learn as fast as you can. It's much easier to learn, but there are things that you cannot delegate to AI, things like empathy. And it is unfortunate that at the moment we are living in the world at a time when empathy seems to be at a very low place, with some of the world leaders and the kind of decisions that are being made and the impact on people's lives. So I would say that we need to structure education in such a way that reminds our students that aside from the engineering skills and the technical skills, how are you building solutions for the humans who are going to, for example, be most affected by the impacts of climate change? We know that the lowest income countries have only contributed a tenth of the emissions, but they are going to be the most affected in terms of food insecurity. They're going to be most affected in terms of increased health crisis. So I think we need to structure our education system. And as students, we need to focus on how can we build solutions for people? How can we build solutions that are advancing humanity, even in the age of increased technological advancements? And of course, looking at the students that we want to encourage to come into sustainability careers and to come into engineering, I will share a little bit from my own perspective that sometimes you don't feel maybe confident enough, or sometimes it looks like a very big hurdle. And what has helped me in these moments is to think about the why. Why am I doing this? So if you look around your environment and identify just one challenge and make that your goal. So it would be great if you're the greatest engineer in the world, but it would also be great if you're the engineer who solves just one challenge in your community, just one challenge for somebody who you haven't met or that you have met. And I think that's something that we need to really also make the focus of our technological developments. So that will be my advice. Just look around you. What's one challenge that you can solve? And I always come back when I talk to giving the example of Richard Turere, the guy from Kenya who developed the Lion Lights, a very low technology solution, but basically said we have increased human-wildlife conflict, and how can we live at peace with so yeah, how can we live at peace with nature around us, with the animals around us? And so by developing this very low technology solution, he was actually able to improve the conditions both for the humans who live near the wildlife areas, but without harming wildlife. And so I think for the students, just look around you. What's one challenge that you can solve? And if possible, and to the best of your ability, let it be something that's going to make a difference in somebody's life, and the engineering skills will come with it because you will have the passion behind it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sharon. I think that's wonderful advice, not only for students, that are in secondary school or university, but lifelong learners too. How can we keep learning and solve problems that we see? So thank you for that. I'll go back over to Maximilian. So I think you already know a little bit about this Schools for Goal 7 project, and students are building renewable energy systems in Minecraft. You've already talked a little bit about this, but I wonder if you could give us a little more detail on how wind energy projects are actually, developed in the real world.
Cool. Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, what you are doing in Schools for Goal 7, like building small renewable systems, that's exactly how wind power also starts in the real world for us, whether it's a model turbine on a school desk or a wind farm somewhere offshore. The same questions at the end apply. Is the wind blowing? Can you convert it efficiently? And how do we do it safely and responsibly? And also for us, it starts with curiosity and testing. So we have our first turbines running for many, many years already now, for decades. And just like you, we experimented with blade shape, tower height. We start by measuring wind, testing designs, learning what works best, so that we can engineer and then also these ideas into true systems at the end. So that from small scale applications, you end up designing full turbines with blades longer than football fields now, towers higher than skyscrapers. And it all is totally optimized for efficiency and durability over a lifetime of, as said, more than 30 years. And sustainability is built in from day one. So really looking at the materials that we utilize, where they are coming from, the steel, the copper, the aluminum, the resins, the fibers. We think how we can reduce emissions along these supply chains, then also how we can protect people in the supply chains, and how we already early on can think about also the recycling at the end of life of the turbines. And this already shows this is not a one person job. It's really engineers, technicians, environmental experts, financial experts coming together, all working as a group on one project. Similar, like we know from school. And at the end, you need this if you really want to build in scale. And this is at the end one of the key lessons also in scaling. So one turbine can power thousands of homes now. A wind farm, cities. But scaling only works if you do it also responsibly, from a technical point of view, from an environmental point of view, from a social point of view. And this mindset, this starts very early on also, when you learn that good solutions at the end balance performance, impact, fairness. So projects like School for Goal 7, it's not just about the science, it's really about, again, the systems thinking. And many people that are designing turbines today, they first learned this by building, testing, failing when they were young. And there's no single career path, as we also have heard now and as we have learned. The energy transition will need all of it: IT, logistics, engineering, sustainability, finance, and the like. So the wind power projects we build today will still be running when many of you are deep in your careers already. But what you are learning now is not just a school exercise, it's really the foundation for shaping also the future of energy systems. And we need your ideas, your skills, your curiosity also to make it happen also in the long run. Amanda, back to you.
Thank you. That was great. And I love that you brought up the point of systems thinking. We have a bunch of different curricular resources for this project, but also for other projects that use systems thinking. So we'll be sure to put that in the chat. And that was some great advice. So over to Thomas. So we have a lot of students, as we've already said, who are really interested in working in climate. They do a lot of projects at school, but then when they go to a job, they're not exactly sure how to translate that and what that means. So what is your advice for students who really want to solve this environmental crises, but don't know how to take that then to their career path, and where can they find these type of opportunities? Mhm.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I was actually at a Green Jobs panel on the side of the World Bank kind of spring meetings 2 weeks ago. And a lot of that was focused on, what's the cost of jobs? And it was a lot for a different audience, right? For policymakers, different stakeholders. And I think what I took away from that, and I was thinking for this event, right? Like what actually is a green job? And I think we should also just take a step back and like understand and appreciate, right? And think about what that is, right? So it isn't just about like getting a certificate, right, to do solar installations, for example, right, or a lot of things that Maximilian said, right. That is what traditionally we think of as green jobs, and all of that is great, right, and we need more and more of that, and I think that's something that we definitely need to continue and to push, right. So, but something like what Angie and I do, right, thinking about sustainability consulting, right, climate consulting, to a certain extent, right, we are also supporting this industry, right, of sustainability, of climate and environment. So to me, right, more or less, this is also a green job as well, right? Maybe not as traditionally textbook defined, right? And then if we go a bit further, right, if we think about small scale fishers, right, if we think about people working in the, regenerative agriculture space, right? Think about people doing circular economy, right? These doesn't need to be formal jobs, right? These can be informal jobs as well, right? Or in the mix of between. So a lot of people are actually contributing to the quote unquote, right, blue and green jobs already, right? And it doesn't need to come with, certificates, skills, trainings, right? Or even an actual, 9 to 5 job, right? There is so many ways that you can contribute to the climate economy. And I think we just need to broaden our horizons a bit and rethink what we are already doing, a lot of what you are already doing, right, within your schools, through this project, right, and through the other things that you're pursuing are actually leading towards that already. But I think the hard thing is how do we actually formalize it and make it more as part of your, quote unquote career, right? And I think this industry is in a very challenging state as of today, right? And we must all recognize that, right? It probably isn't going to get easier in the next few years. So I think my point of view now is as much as we can do ourselves, right? And as much as we can formalize it to our quote unquote 9 to 5, that is great, right? But if not, we should definitely still continue to pursue what we're working on because, right, even though it's not a quote unquote job, that is still making an impact, right? Pushing the needle for it a little bit.
That's a great point to kind of expand what we think of green jobs and how we can do this not only in our professional lives, but our personal lives as well. So thank you so much for that, Thomas. So over to Assam. I want to ask you a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of how computing and AI are changing the workforce, because I know you have a large portfolio on AI. And what do you think, how do you think that affects what students should be learning or focusing on today?
Oh, that's a great question, Amanda. Well, honestly, I'll start with my own career as a case study for this question because I've changed the answer, because I've seen the answer change 3 times already in less than a decade. So when I was working as an architect, my technical edge was with some of these softwares like Rhino, Revit, Grasshopper, AutoCAD, and these computational design tools applied to buildings and master planning. That's what made me useful on $300 million projects at 23 years old. Then, when I started my master's in Columbia and looking into sustainability practices more, the toolkit shifted and it was about SEMA Pro, GHG accounting framework, RStudio, Python, and such. And now in 2026, it's shifting one more time. And this one, I would actually want students to be focused on, which is having access to agentic AI systems. So there's a small, narrow window open right now. Agentic systems, models that can plan, act, and iterate on real tasks end to end, are finally good enough to do meaningful work, meaningful professional work. But most of the people in the workforce are not using them to the highest potential. That gap is the opportunity. The students who learn to operate these systems on real problems in the next 2 or 3 years will walk into the workforce with an unusual amount of leverage. So use AI as a tool to advance your work, not as a shortcut around it. Pick a real hard task in your field, whatever you're interested in. Not a class assignment, but like an actual problem that someone might care about or you deeply care about, and run it through an agent. Watch where the agent gets things right, watch where it breaks, and watch where you break in trusting it. That feedback loop is the skill. It's not the prompt engineering. It's judgment about when to trust the output, when to verify, and what to keep human. That is originally you. So what is necessary is that you need to understand that AI is not replacing anyone. It's that it lets one person punch above their weight if they know how to use it properly. So the work will increase, but the skill sets are increasing simultaneously. So pair it with a domain. Pure AI generalists will get commoditized, and pure domain experts who avoid the tools will get leveraged out. So the combination is where the value sits from my perspective. For students aiming at this sector, you should be experimenting with these tools, and sort of building a portfolio of what you have done with these tools might help you in the future. So I'll hand it over back to Amanda now.
Thank you so much. That was very practical advice for students. That's really nice to kind of to hear and how you see even the trends since you were in school, which is really great. So our last formal question before we open to the audience will go to Angie. So maybe switching a little bit for students that might be interested more in industries like fashion or retail or consumer products, how can they break into that space? And what do companies look for?
Great. Thanks, Amanda. I did some thinking about this question. I think it's such a good one. And fashion and retail is perhaps a little bit of a, what's the right word? Unconventional path into sustainability, but it does comprise about 10% of global emissions. So it is pretty significant. And one of the reasons why I was most interested in joining Nike as well. When I think about Nike and also a lot of global brands, and it's probably not confined to the industry as well, there are, I think, 5 key skills that students should be focused on developing or thinking about. And when I thought about this question, I thought, okay, here are the 5 key skills. And then undeniably, in the age of AI, as you've asked, Azam, I think it's really important to think about how we can be intentional and supplement our education so that students are prepared to enter the workforce in the age of AI. So I thought about the 5 key skills, and then I thought about how human value actually just shifts in the age of AI. So let me share those skills with you. I think number 1 is rigorous analytical thinking. Every role at a brand like Nike and others like Nike emphasize structured problem solving, financial modeling, and really the ability to turn data into a clear recommendation. I think the second key skill is the ability to storytell and using that storytelling to drive decision making. So analysis alone doesn't move organizations. It's the ability to communicate it that does. The third really important skill, I think, is comfort with ambiguity. So, Nike and other companies across the world, want people who don't freeze when problems are undefined, who can structure analysis when there are unclear situations, and also who have an ability to act without perfect information. Number 4 is something that Sharon mentioned. It's that sort of, at Nike, it would have been called cross-functional leadership, the ability to work across silos to get things done and to align people who may not necessarily be on your team, but are integral to getting the job done. And then the 5th is genuine brand passion. So, at Nike, it would have been an understanding of sport or sport culture And that's really hard to fake, actually, in the age of AI. It's something that's makes a candidate very memorable and distinguishable. So when I think about the AI shifts and where human value lives within each of those five skills, as I mentioned, rigorous analytical thinking, I think this is the one where AI most directly impacts it. AI can run the analysis now, it can build the model, it can synthesize the data faster than any analyst. But what it cannot do, is reliably structure a problem in the first place. So deciding what variables matter, what questions to actually ask, and what the model should be testing. Storytelling, AI supplements but doesn't replace. So it's really good. AI is really good at drafting decks, coming up with prose. But what it can't do still, it can't read the room. It doesn't know what executive needs to hear, what argument framed around what risks and what opportunities. That third skill that I mentioned, comfort with ambiguity, this is almost entirely human. AI, is pattern matching based on the past, but those novel, undefined situations where there's nothing to match against, that's where AI is the weakest and where human judgment is the most valuable. On cross-functional leadership, that's also almost entirely human. How do you communicate? How do you align people across organizations who have competing interests? How do you build trust? How do you read interpersonal dynamics? How do you negotiate? All of that is uniquely human tasks. And then, as I mentioned, finally, that genuine brand passion, that's possibly the most important thing. I think AI makes it easier for everyone to produce competent analysis, but that cultural intuition and taste is harder and harder to fake and more differentiating. So I hope that helps. Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for giving us all of those specifics. I think passion for the brand is something that I wouldn't, think about, but it does definitely, makes sense in this setting when we're talking about these type of products. So I want to open the questions to the audience. I would say you can post them in the chat or you can raise your hand. I know some of our students from the Schools for Goal 7 project had questions. So we're excited to hear from them and of course others on the call here as well. So I'll give it a second. I do see the hand, but I'm just going to give 30 seconds for everyone to think about their questions or raise their hand. And great. And we'll go first over to Michael, over to you. And you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, we're actually a school here in Wuhan. Hi, everybody. My student Jerry here has the question.
So the question is mainly about the fact. So we learned in the Minecraft game what materials the wind turbines are made of. So it raises the question like a lot of the producing of these materials require fossil fuels. And the question is there any further solutions that address the problem of the usage of fossil fuels in this term?
That's great. Thank you so much for the question. I'm going to take Avni's question next, and then we'll go to the panelists. So Avni, you can unmute.
Hi, I'm Avni from Shining Star International School. I enjoyed building and learning about sustainability in the game. But as a student, I would like to know what mistakes can students avoid in school, like throwing the trash on the floor. So what mistakes can students avoid, but all students can avoid?
Thank you so much for that. So the first question on the fossil fuels and the materials, I think we should give that over to Maximilian. I think that would be a good question for you. And then Avni's question on the skills, if anyone else wants to jump in on that. Hamda, I'll let you ask your question as well first, and then just so we get yours as well.
Hi, my name is Hamda bint Shahid. I'm from Shining Star International School in UAE. I really enjoy the Minecraft game and all. But my question is, how do you think artificial intelligence and sustainability will shape sustainability jobs?
Thank you so much for that. So Maximilian, if you can answer the fossil fuel question first, that would be amazing.
Very good. This is a brilliant question, and it goes really to one of the problems because 99% of a wind turbine's carbon footprint is related to the materials we use. 80% of it is related to the steel and iron that we use, 10% to copper, 5% to aluminum, and the rest to the resins and the fibers that we use. And as you said, the mining and processing of the materials, it's really the resource intense process steps. And what we see is that the big heavy machinery and equipment, the big trucks that we use to also move the earth and crash the rocks, there we see a lot of advancements in terms of utilizing biofuel. So that's one of the key levers for decarbonizing also the sites. We also see a lot of steam pumps, solar energy and the like installed now close at the mining sites to provide electricity also in some remote locations. And every now and then, also some mining companies come back to us and install wind turbines close by to produce energy and in the future also hydrogen for the machinery and equipment that they utilize. While decarbonization is really one key aspect, the other one is, of course, also water usage. So those two things need to go hand in hand for the mining industry, as this is really where the impact comes from.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's perfect. Thank you so much for that. So maybe I'll turn it over to Sharon to kind of answer the next two questions. One was any other advice you have on AI and skills, and how can students maybe not make sustainability mistakes? Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I think for the first question, Angie kind of answered it when she talked about the things that AI cannot do, and when she talked about building critical thinking, building, ethical judgment. And I think that's something that we need to build generally as our skills. So we need to look at, okay, AI is going to help us with automating repetitive tasks. It's going to help us in getting better at analyzing. And once that has been taken over, then what are the skills that we can build as humans? And that means that looking at a situation and reading the room, again, as Angie said, and basically saying, this is the best decision in my context. And this is something that AI cannot do because I come from Kenya. I come from a very specific region in Kenya, and therefore I have an understanding of what solutions are needed in my region because of my lived experience, not because of data that exists on the internet that AI can learn from. So I think in terms of skills, as students, I would again just encourage us to really learn to identify problems, to define problems, because this is something that is going to be very valuable going forward. And from the questions that are coming up, I think our students have already developed this quite a bit. In terms of sustainability mistakes that we can avoid, so the first one I would say is seeking perfection. So we are all trying to be more sustainable in how we live in our daily lives, not just in the workplace. And I think if you, for example, around what our parents buy for us or what we buy for ourselves, how we shop, and the habits that we develop, when you try to be perfect in everything, then you face the danger that it becomes a burden. But if you ask yourself, what's one little thing I can do differently today? So instead of buying this product, maybe I buy something different that's more sustainably packaged. Or if you look at our energy consumption, the little things like, I'm just going to turn off the lights or I'm going to do. So it's the little steps that are going to make a big difference instead of thinking, oh, I have to live 100% perfect or else I'm not going to be advancing sustainability. So I think it's just about looking at, hey, what are the three little things I can do in my daily life, in my family, at school with my classmates, and that is something that will help you to go further. And same thing when you get into the workplace, to think, okay, we cannot solve everything in one day. The crisis of climate change is something that we have built over the past decades, and it's going to take time to solve. But you should come in with the attitude that what's the first thing or what's the one small thing that we can change, and then keep amplifying and keep building on that. Yeah. I hope I answered both questions. I might have
That was great. Thank
mixed it
you
up
so
a bit.
much.
Yeah.
So I'm going to combine some questions and each give each of the remaining panelists just a minute or two to speak. So Azam, Thomas, and Angie, I'll combine some questions for you. So Thomas, I think it would be maybe great to dive more into the question in the chat is how can we ensure entry level or early career folks are recognized? And also there's a question about COP and conventions. Why do these things just come up at these big advocacy spaces and they're not like throughout the lifetime of the year? So I'll hand that over to you, maybe just a minute answer, because I quickly want to get Assam and Angie. I know it's hard to answer in 1 minute, but
Yeah, thank you, man. Just really briefly, I typed in the chat as well. I think in order for entry, young professionals like myself to be recognized, there's a couple of things, right? One, you just got to be, self-advocating, and I think that's really important. And programs like Global School really reinforces that as well. So whatever you guys are doing right now, right, please do continue to do. So that self-advocacy aspect is so important. And the second part of that first question is like bring your point of view, right? So like if you're talking about things about climate and energy and environment, right? Whatever that is, right? If you do have a point of view, do have it and in the right spaces, do share that. In terms of COP, advocacy, conferences, panels, right? I think the global system, right, is advancing and these forums are amazing. But like how much are these, global forums actually moving the needle and year by year, right? Like are we seeing the same things versus doing the different things, right? So I think there's different ways to think of it, but having people like us in these forums are important, right? So if there's opportunities for me to be at these forums, of course, I will try to be at those forums, right? But are these forums are really where the difference is actually being made, right? In the past, I think it has a lot more impact, right? Let's think about like Kyoto, like Montreal, right? Those were like needle moving settings, right? But these days, right? Again, back to a lot of the local things, right? Whatever we are able to do, I think that is the key.
Mhm. Thank you so much for that. That's great and really good advice for students entering these spaces. Quickly, I'd love to get Assam and Angie's comments on one of our last student questions. Can sustainability exist without slowing economic growth? And can individual actions of students actually make a difference? What's your advice on individual actions of students? So Assam, over to you, and then I'll go to Angie.
Yeah, so one of the key things that we are focused on is that development should not be stopped in favor of sustainability. And most of the global south countries are more focused on development and their developmental goals. So the way we work on this is that you need to consider what are the changes in economics, what are the changes, future changes in employment opportunities, how are the communities being affected by this change, for example, let's say from coal to renewable energy. So considering all of those aspects and finding the best solutions is something our organization does, and we are not the only one. Many people and organizations in the world are focused on simultaneous development with focusing on climate goals. Amanda, back to you.
Thank you so much. And I'll let Angie kind of take this last word on do students and individual actions really make a difference? And then I'll kind of close us out.
Thanks, Amanda. And with consideration of the time, I'll just offer one final thought, which is a quote that I've always loved from the anthropologist Margaret Mead, who said, "Never doubt that a group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." So with that, good luck to the students. I know you guys are well equipped, and it's going to be a wonderful challenge to tackle together.
I think that was a great last word from you. So just to close us out in 30 seconds here, I've put our Schools for Goal 7 project link in the chat. Please feel free to check it out, see the resources and the work we're doing. Check out the Planet Rescuers Minecraft education game, sign up for our newsletter. And we will share this recording with everyone that participated and that's in the program. And just to say a huge thank you to the time for our speakers for sharing your wisdom, sharing your advice. We really appreciate the time you spent with us today, and we hope it was useful for the students and teachers. So once again, thanks for spending this hour with us. And we'll see you all at the next session, and I'll be sending out some information. So thank you everyone so much and have a great rest of your day.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good rest of your afternoon, everyone, and your evenings, wherever you are in the world.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. See everyone soon. Hi, Rocio. Nice to see you.
Hi.
Call on you.
Sorry for the technical problem today.
I'm sorry I didn't call on you. I didn't see you, but it's good to see you.
No problem. Thank you for organizing that. That was absolutely fantastic. That was really cool.
Great. Well, we'll talk soon.
Thank
I'm gonna
you very much.
yeah. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye,
Bye bye
everyone.
from Nigeria.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.